It's another Thunder Thursday on News OK Live. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman, joined by our Thunder coverage team, columnist Jenny Carlson.
Hey.
Columnist Barry Trammell. And back from the West Coast, where he covered two terrible performances by the Oklahoma City Thunder, Anthony Slater.
Thunder, what's up? Just got back into the city.
Thunder Thursdays, of course, are brought to you by our good friends from Wheeler Chevrolet. Take that drive down I-40, save yourself some time and money. Anthony, you're taking a drive from somewhere, I presume the airport. So we'll start with you. I said terrible. Today's headline in the Oklahoman called it star-stuck. What adjective would you use to describe what you saw Wednesday night in Sacramento?
Disinterested. It's kind of weird in the Sacramento. Just, in different arenas you sit different spots. In Sacramento, we sit right behind the Thunder bench. It's honestly not a great seat, like watching the game, but it is a great seat for seeing interactions within the team and kind of getting the mood of the team. And I mean, it just didn't seem like they cared throughout. I mean, you're down 20. It's kind of a win you need. This is a team we're so used to in the past, having so much fun on the bench. Different high fives, this and that. Last night they just didn't seem that into the game. A lot of it was foul trouble. Everyone, besides maybe Serge Ibaka, was playing poorly, so they were a little down on themselves. But they just seemed a little down on the team and just, not really caring too much of what was going on the court, even when they'd hit a three that would kind of, bring them back maybe to within 9. They just really didn't seem to care that much, or at least not as much as we've seen this team in the past.
Barry, you and I had a conversation this morning about the viewing experience. Watching at home on television, what's your adjective?
Boring. I watched both games in their entirety, and both were out of sense of duty. I gave up emotionally and intellectually somewhere in the second quarter of both games. And I don't remember ever giving up on a Thunder game before in that manner, and twice in a row it's happened. I just watched just in case I needed to talk about it or write about it or whatever. So games like that happen in the NBA. They've never happened to the Thunder twice in a row. So to me, that was a very, very bad sign. Sacramento has left the business of winning. They're not interested in winning ball games this season. When they fired Mike Malone, they admitted it, and the Thunder went in there and didn't even put up a fight. So that's a very, very big alarm to me.
Darnell, Barry said he checked out intellectually. What's your adjective to describe what happened last night to the Thunder?
What was Slater? So I make sure I don't repeat what he said.
I said disinterested. I was just talking about.
Barry said boring.
Disinterested, boring. I think you guys are being too kind. I think it was pitiful, and that's I think putting it kindly. Still, if we only had to choose one, I'd say pitiful. But it was pathetic. It was embarrassing. It was disheartening. The guys just looked like they didn't want to be there. The same things that have plagued this team in the past continue to plague them. The defense is inconsistent. The offense is out of sync. There's no accountability for poor shots, ill-advised shots, turnovers. These guys are just going through the motions out there, and it looks real bad right now. And I think the answer to the question is pathetic.
Jenny, our good friend Don McCoy, the business editor, a Thunder follower if there ever was one, I think he would lean towards forgettable. And what he would mean is that I think, in fact, he said, by May we won't even remember this game. Will we, and how will you remember it?
Well, the Thunder have to hope we won't remember it if they don't make the playoffs, which if they keep playing like this, they're not going to make the playoffs, my friends. We'll remember it because it will be part of a long string of games that led to that. But if they make the playoffs, now that may be true, although they're fighting for spots. And when you're fighting for spots, if you're just going to go lay down at Sacramento and say we don't care about winning this game, that's not good. The adjective I'd throw out there is disturbing, guys, and here's why, is that we saw them 2 nights before go and get their doors blown off by Golden State, which, okay, Golden State's one of the best teams in the league right now, if not the best team in the league. And really, when the snowball gets going, it can get out of control. So that's the kind of game that you could say, all right, it happened. Now we got to put it in the rearview mirror. But to then go to Sacramento 48 hours later and play with such lack of passion, interest, focus, to me, that's disturbing for a team that's under 500 and fighting for a spot in the playoffs. To not see that as an opportunity to show that what happened 2 nights before wasn't them, and to win a game. I mean, where's the pride? Where's the personal, moments of guys saying, we got to be better than this. We got to do better than this. I didn't see any of that last night, and that to me is disturbing.
It sounds like, Darnell, this might go down as one of the worst losses, regular season losses, since this franchise relocated to Oklahoma City and started seriously trying to win.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the worst losses to get beat by 21 points against a Kings team that, as Barry said, I mean, they're not in the business of winning basketball games at this point. So you can't go out there, especially coming off of another 20-point loss or whatever it was 2 nights earlier at Golden State, and you thought that the Thunder would play a better game than that, and they simply just did not look interested in doing it, couldn't make shots. And the fact that everyone's healthy and that they were, a game behind, a game under 500, now they're 2 games under 500. They got everything to play for and everything to lose, and they just looked like they didn't belong on the same court as the Sacramento Kings, and that was disturbing. It was boring. It was pathetic. It was pitiful, and whatever Jenny said.
Barry, on the way in, the commute, the talk on the local talk radio was about Scott Brooks' job security. Didn't sound like he had much in the eyes of the morning animals. Didn't sound like he had much in the eyes of the people calling, including Jim Traber. I wonder where you put Scott Brooks' job security right now.
Well, I mean, I think Scott's job is at least on the table. I mean, I think it's something you discuss if you're the Thunder Brass, because the biggest thing going for Scott is that the players liked him and played for him. And if they're not playing for him anymore and they're not listening to him anymore, what good is he, just to be blunt about it? So the 2 games they played in California were a sign that they don't care that too much about their coach. So,
He'll come back here in a second.
I don't think.
Keep coming. He locked
Am
up.
I on?
Now you are.
Okay, I think they were playing. I think the Thunder was playing hard, but they were just playing dazed and confused and not very smart, and virtually no offensive system. Frustrations were boiling over early in the game, so it was a pitiful performance, as Darnell said, and here's the deal: Scotty's getting late in his contract, which means there's not a lot of reason to keep him around if they're going to play like this.
Jenny, in case nobody's noticed, Oklahoma's in a bit of a coach firing mood these days. Bob Stoops sent a couple packing earlier this week. Some of the folks who follow OU football, who are heavily involved and invested in that program, are also some of the folks who are on the ownership group of the Oklahoma City Thunder. One outfit got rid of its offensive leadership. Do you think Scott Brooks' job is in danger?
Well, a couple more games like this, and I don't know why it wouldn't be. I mean, we were talking about this at lunch. It's obviously a hot topic right now, and I don't know if you can necessarily blame Scott Brooks 100% for what we saw last night or 3 nights ago now. I think there are definitely some shortcomings, but as Darnell, as AC, as several people have pointed out over time, there's only so much a coach can do in terms of what they call. If Reggie goes into one of those, I'm going to dribble behind my back 39 times and then take a shot mode, or Russell decides he's pulling up for 3 in transition, regardless of what they've said, what good does Scott Brooks' play calling do? I mean, those guys have got to respond. And, maybe that does have a link back to coaching in terms of if there's no accountability, then those guys are just free to do whatever they want, and they don't feel there'll be any repercussions. They won't get pulled. They won't get benched. So maybe that does go back to Scott Brooks. But it's been like that forever, and it's just been allowed to go on. I don't know if they're going to make a move. I'm not suggesting that. I think there's a lot to be said for Scott Brooks as a coach. But if you start to lose guys and they're not responding to what you're doing, to me in the NBA, that's a lot of the battle, is having guys respond to what you want. And if those guys aren't responding, then that to me is a big old warning sign for Scott Brooks.
Anthony, you were there, courtside, sitting behind the Thunder bench. What was the response level last night in Golden State?
The question was cracking up, but I assume we're talking about Scott Brooks.
Yeah, and how and just what the tone and tenor and how were they responding to him last night? We saw how they were responding, indeed, on the court in their actions, but how about on the bench? We lost Anthony. Darnell, how about it? The Thunder's got a unique schedule coming up. They play Friday night at home against Utah, and then are off for 1 week. Does that put any kind of onus? Is there any sort of drama built in there? How much and how important is Friday night?
They're in a no-win situation Friday, I think, because of these last 2 losses. It's a Utah team that's 10 games under 500. They're one of the doormats of the division. If they beat them, it's who cares. If they lose to them, it's time to hit the panic button again. So, I don't think the Thunder's in a win-win situation, or they're in a no-win situation on Friday night. So you got to look beyond that this Friday's game against Utah and look what they do against the best teams in the West, because so far they haven't really been good against the best teams in the West, and they've got to figure out a way. I mean, they got the San Antonio win on Christmas Day. Kevin Durant didn't play. Kawhi Leonard didn't play. No Boris Diaw, no Patty Mills. So that was a little bit of a screwy game. I think this team's going to ultimately be judged in the regular season by what they do against the best teams in the league. And so far, they don't have a good record against those competitors.
Barry, Darnell asked the question, until they figure it out. Well, let's figure it out. What is an obvious move or something obvious the Oklahoma City Thunder needs to do to get back to playing basketball the way it knows how?
Well, I mean, to me, we heard the entire offseason, this new offensive system, this move the ball, this commitment to a new way to play. The injuries meant we couldn't get a good look at it. But since Durant and Westbrook have come back, we still hadn't seen much of that. Durant and Westbrook have shown, periodic or not, frequent greatness on their own. This idea of the ball flying around from hand to hand without much dribbling, we haven't seen that at all. That's just talk. Really, I don't want to hear any more about it. If they're going to do it, I watch every game, so if they're going to do it, I'll notice it on the court, but I don't want to hear any more talk about it, because what they do is they bring the ball up and clear out and dribble, and somebody jacks up a shot. That's their offense. So, when Westbrook goes 3 for 19, they got no chance of winning. When he goes 10 for 19, they got a good chance of winning. So that's what this team's about right now is, it really comes down to, is Russell Westbrook going to have a good percentage? And when he doesn't, they got no chance. And until that changes, they're going to have nights like this.
On the list of things that I don't want to hear anymore, can we also stop with the defensive disposition? That talk to me is tired. Dion Waiters, he did actually give some effort on the defensive end last night, but if you're going after guys known for what Dion Waiters is known for, please, can we stop with the defensive disposition talk too?
Hey, and going back to Barry's point, all that talk in the preseason about better ball movement, better player movement, better spacing, more structure, they're 30th in the league in assists.
Yep.
Dead last. After all that talk, granted they had the injuries throughout November and even December, but even when Durant and Westbrook have been back, we haven't seen all that this team talked about in the preseason leading up to this year about being a better offensive team.
Jenny, how about that outside the box idea we discussed over lunch, and you talked about defensive disposition. Is anybody think it's possible that the wrong center it might be the Thunder's right starting center based on upside and all those other things, but maybe the wrong center at this time? In other words, what about Kendrick Perkins back out there as the traffic cop for this team? Any chance that would do something for the sort of at least the defensive accountability?
Well, it surely couldn't hurt. You'd be sacrificing some offense, no doubt about it, but they got off to a 25-7 deficit last night. You mean to tell me that they couldn't use a little defensive help? And how much more offensive struggles could they have than 7 points? I mean, for crying out loud. We were talking about this. You mentioned our lunchtime conversation about Perk, and I have defended Perk. Yes, I think he's got some value. It's not on the offensive end. It's clearly on the defensive end. But it seems to me without him out there, that accountability on the court, it's like when Dad leaves. Dad's out of the house, everybody go crazy. When Perk's not on the court, you not only lose his defense, but you lose his sort of traffic cop mentality over those other guys to actually stay in front of somebody. So I don't know if they would actually do better in terms of that with him out there, but I can't imagine it'd be any worse. And, I think we were talking about this too. Look at when they've lost guys in the past. They lose Durant last year, and Westbrook goes crazy, and they're still playing great ball. They lose Westbrook, Durant goes crazy, they're still playing great ball. Hurt gets hurt last year, they go in a slide. So, I don't know if you can say that that's a fix-all, but it might be worth trying. AC's back, and I got to say this for AC. I love Steven Adams, but if they're not going to play better defense, might as well try Perk back out there.
Don't be taking shots at Stone Cold now. He's playing pretty well right now.
Have him tell those other 4 guys to get after it while he's out there on the court with them. Have him start forearm shivering some of his own teammates if they don't play better defense.
I agree with you in that sense, but at the same time, if we're just talking last night, every single big was bad last night because they'd come in, get 2 fouls. They were just shuffling them in, foul trouble, Perk included. So I think if we're talking last night, no shots at Stone Cold here.
Well, here's the thing that I saw last night, is I saw a lot of very bad defensive, just fundamentals. Guys leaving their feet, guys trying to jump everywhere. I told the guys in here earlier, it felt like I was watching a super athletic bunch of 6th graders. They didn't know how to play fundamentals, but man, they were athletic, so they were going to just jump around and see if they couldn't get in the passing lane or, maybe deflect a shot. It was completely unfundamental out there defensively during several stretches last night. It was maddening to watch because you're thinking, these guys get paid millions of dollars to play this game, and that's how they're playing defense? It was terrible.
Yeah, and I think the main problem is on the perimeter. Interior, they were fine last night. I think Cousins shot 5 of 23. I know they had a lot of fouls. Serge Ibaka had 8 blocks. But the 2 problems last night were the perimeter defense, guys not staying in front. And then number 2 is the offense. We're talking about a Kings team that hadn't held a team under 100 points since Ty Corbin took over. And the Thunder scored 83 points last night.
Let's move on to the big trade for Dion Waiters. Darnell, you've weighed in on this. Anthony has too. Barry has too. We'll get to the number here in a second. But what should we make of this trade, Darnell?
I think on paper it looks great, just in terms of what the Thunder, how they were able to acquire him and what they had to give up for him. Basically a protected first-round pick that if it stays in the top 18, it's theirs this year. If it's in the top 15, the next 2 years it stays with them. If it's not, then it goes to Cleveland. And Lance Thomas, that's all that they gave up for a guy who was the 4th overall pick. But then once you see him play on the floor, and granted he did, do some things well last night, shooting notwithstanding, going 1 of 9. But, he just doesn't really fit with what this team does. He's another ISO-heavy player. He needs the ball in his hands. He's shot-happy, doesn't really look for teammates. And I think you got a logjam now in the backcourt, not just with the shooting guards, but also with the point guards. He's taking minutes from Anthony Morrow, as we saw last night. He's going to take some shots from Reggie Jackson, and he's already struggling to find his way with playing next to Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. So I just don't think the pieces fit together. in reality. And I think Sam Presti's going to have to make another move to try to clear some of that up and get someone in here.
Anthony, was this a good deal for the Thunder?
Yes, because for a couple reasons. Darnell obviously already mentioned that they didn't give anything up for him, and really, I mean, it's just an asset. We know how Presti likes assets. Let's say Waiters really doesn't work out, the chemistry doesn't fit. They still have a month to ship him somewhere else. He still holds some value because we know he can score in this league. Teams will want him, so you can trade him and get the pick back that you lost probably, And also, let's say he does fit well, then now he's a Reggie Jackson insurance if you need to trade Reggie and get a piece this season, or if you go into the offseason and Reggie decides to sign somewhere else and Waiters works out, you got another year of Waiters as your sixth man and some money to spend elsewhere. So I think it makes sense fundamentally. We'll see how it develops on the court. But, I don't blame the Thunder at all for making the move. Barry,
of the three guards that flew around in this deal, did the Thunder get the wrong one?
I would have a lot rather had Iman Shumpert.
They weren't going to be able to get him, though.
No, here's my problem with Waiter. He actually improves the Thunder defense. As bad as he is, look at the three perimeter defenders coming off the bench: Reggie Jackson, Anthony Morrow, and then once in a blue moon, Jeremy Lamb. Waiters can defend as well as those guys, so it's not like he drags down the defense, but he doesn't pick it up. So they've got defensive problems coming off the bench. Waiters doesn't address that. It's free money. It didn't cost them anything, so you might as well make the deal. But in all likelihood, it's not going to help them much.
Jenny, we heard that Reggie Jackson thought he was packing his bags, and from everything I read from Anthony and see from Anthony's videos, it didn't sound like Reggie was all that broke up about it. The other rumor floating around out there is that Brooke Lopez has been talked about coming to Oklahoma City. Do you get the feeling that it's clear Sam Presti's not finished?
Yeah, I don't think he is. I think acquiring Waiters and, talking about how he just adds to the logjam. I think it's pretty clear that somebody else is going to be dealt, maybe somebody's else is going to be dealt. I just can't imagine that you would keep Waiters on the roster with Lamb. Maybe they're ready to say that the Jeremy Lamb experiment has come to an end. They just don't see how that's going to work out. He can possibly be traded and sent somewhere else. I have to think that there's still moves to be made because it's one of those things that we see it happen often in sports. Where a team will draft like 2 or 3 quarterbacks all at once, or 16 running backs all of a sudden, and you think, wait, what's going on here? And that they're getting ready to package and move, and I think that's what's happening here. At least I would hope. Otherwise, it's a little bit screwy to think that they'd have all these guys on the roster together.
Guys, finally, as Anthony reported, the Thunder was trying to was handing out a number to Dion Waiters, and he requested somewhere down the list, Anthony, number 13, and they said, no, we don't wear number 13. Why won't they just give it out, Anthony?
Well, the Thunder kind of rightly obviously come under some heat from this. The blogosphere kind of picked it up after I put it out there, and Barry, wrote a pretty good column this morning. Let me kind of defend the Thunder a little bit at this point. One of Barry's points was nobody's comparing Dion Waiters to James Harden, which they probably shouldn't be. But on the night Dion Waiters got traded, Scott Brooks was asked 2 questions about James Harden, if he could be James Harden. Mark Spears wrote a story that I think was titled, "Can Dion Waiters be James Harden-esque?" And then Dion Waiters was asked 2 questions about James Harden in his introductory kind of press conference thing. So some people are, and from the Thunder's perspective, we know how careful they are. And they obviously didn't think Waiters was just going to come out and tell us this. So I'm not surprised they did this.
If the Thunder's trying to get James Harden out of our mind, Barry, wouldn't giving Dion Waiters number 13 do that?
Well, I don't know. If what AC says is correct, and there are people that actually go around asking the question, can Dion Waiters be James Harden-esque? I mean, maybe Brock Lopez. Maybe when he comes in, he can be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That would solve all the problems, and we can be hunky dory here on the hangout. For crying out loud, you got to move on. You know how long it's been? It's now been 27 months since they traded James Harden. 27 months. That's a long time.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I honestly agree it was kind of petty of the Thunder. But at the same time, it's been 27 months. The Thunder haven't got over it, but the national media hasn't got over it. Nobody's gotten over it. It's still talked about, not just – I mean, the Thunder are obviously doing something that's keeping it alive, but they didn't think it was going to get out there. But it is still very much talked about by people.
Okay, quick hangout poll. Raise your hand if you know the meaning of hunky-dory. Raise your hand. Get them up high.
I think – well, I'll let everyone raise their hand, but I think I know.
Darnell, what does hunky-dory mean?
Darnell doesn't know what hunky-dory means?
It means it's all good.
Yeah. It's like Barry saying for sure. Like I say for sure, Barry says that's hunky dory.
If I ever say for sure, somebody can hit me in the head with a hammer.
If I ever say hunky dory, you can hit me in the head with a hammer.
Okay, those are both promises. Jenny, what about this number 13 this problem, and also the idea that the Thunder won't give him number 1 because Gus Williams wore it, or what about the Thunder numerology?
Yeah, we actually had to go look up the numbers because when we read what AC had sent in about the numbers, okay, we knew Perry Jones had 3. The Harden thing had been explained, although goofy as it was. But then we said, 1? Who's 1? And Eric Horn, our internet guy, said, I think Ish Smith is. And we were like, no. We looked it up, and nobody was. And so then it required going through the wormhole to figure out that the Thunder, well, they're not sort of. They are living up to those retired numbers by the Sonics, and I know we'd forgotten until that point that Kendrick Perkins didn't get to wear. Is it 43? Is that what he wanted to wear?
That's it.
Yeah, so they are not letting their players wear jerseys that were retired in Seattle. That seems goofy to me as well. Maybe not as goofy as not allowing them to wear 13 because Harden wore it, but
Harden's got a longer history with this franchise than the guy that was number 1.
In the Thunder's defense, part of this was contractual with the relocation. The Thunder had the intellectual property, if you will, of the Sonics for like was it RFD? I think it was 5 years, and then it reverted back to Seattle if Seattle got another franchise. But so I think what the Thunder is saying is we're living up to the letter of the law, but it's all sort of goofy. That should never, the history of the Sonics in terms of records and things like that, fine, but even championship banners, retired jerseys, numbers, they shouldn't be in Oklahoma City. They weren't. Gus Williams, Jack Sikma, the '79 NBA championship, that has nothing to do with Oklahoma City. It shouldn't be transferred out here.
Guys, finally, let's have some fun with this. Darnell, if they won't let James Harden wear number 13, but you were walking up there and requesting a number, what number would you pick?
I would go with old reliable, number 10. That was my high school number. It's a good look.
Earl the Pearl Monroe, Bobby Dandridge. Barry, what's your number?
I would go with 02.
Oh my God!
What?
Hey,
what?
Back in the 70s.
Hit him with the Westbrook, Slater.
Back in the 70s.
What?
Back in the 70s, OCU was the best fun of basketball you've ever seen. They were playing racehorse basketball long before Billy Tubbs was. They had some sharpshooters. They had this great scorer named Ozzie Edwards. Ozzie Edwards, just one Z. Ozzie Edwards, Paul Hansen, and Abe Lemons let Ozzie Edwards wear 02 was his number. I thought that was the coolest thing. In junior high, I asked for 02. The people there at the athletic shop doing our team jersey said it's illegal, you can't do it. So the establishment won the day, but I think in my next life, when I get the chance, I think the establishment will be beaten down, and I will wear 02 in honor of Ozzie Edwards.
Jenny, who are you wearing? What jersey number will honor whom?
We are officially out of time after Barry's story. I would wear 9. That is a familial number. I never played team sports. Golf was my thing. You don't wear, obviously, numbers, so I've never actually had a jersey with numbers on it.
What is 9 your average score per hole?
Nah.
Jeez, he's taking shots.
I know. It says the guy that plays. Well, no, I'm not.
So
I'm
the
not
guy
going
who wants
there.
to wear 0-2. We try to hold off the shots.
Exactly. Well, now I'm not going. I'm going to be nice, Barry. Unlike you. No, 9 is what my brothers always wore in football, basketball, baseball. So I'll go with 9.
Okay, Anthony, what's your number?
Well, the Thunderbolt like this. I wore
13.
3. I wore 3 in basketball. So I'd be having some issues with Perry Jones. And then my favorite athlete growing up, kind of random, was Omar Vizquel on the Indians. So I wore 13 a lot in baseball. So I would then have tried to get 13. And, well, they said, oh, never mind, you're not a 6-man, you're a starter. So I might have been able to wear 13.
The correct answer for number is 5, Brooks Robinson, 19, John Unitas. Either one would do. That's all for this edition of Thunder Thursdays, but you can stay with the best coverage team every day on News OK and every morning in the Oklahoman. Remember, Thunder Thursdays are brought to you by good friends, Wheeler Chevrolet. Take that drive down I-40, save time and money. Thanks, folks.